The wedding invitations were already sent when I met him. My fiancé, except he wasn't really mine, just a desperate businessman needing a temporary wife for his inheritance. And I? Just a small-town girl needing to disappear. We had rules, no feelings, no attachments. We broke every single one. If you've ever wondered what happens when a business arrangement collides with real emotions, hit that like button and subscribe. This story changed my life, and it might just change how you see love too. Every fairy tale starts with once upon a time, but my story, it starts with, I need to get the hell out of this town. That's what I whispered to myself every morning while staring at the ceiling of my studio apartment, listening to the neighbor's baby cry through paper-thin walls. I grew up in Mill Creek, one of those places where everyone knows your business before you do. Small enough that leaving feels impossible. Big enough that staying feels suffocating, especially after what happened with Derek. Derek was my high school sweetheart turned nightmare. The kind who starts with, I just worry about you, and ends with tracking apps on your phone. 3 years of my life dissolved into walking on eggshells and making myself smaller. When I finally gathered the courage to leave him, he made sure everyone in town heard his version first. Suddenly, I was the villain in my own story. So there I was, 25, working at Sunrise Diner, serving the same people I'd known since kindergarten. Tips barely covered rent, and Derek's truck still drove by my apartment too often to be coincidence. My manager kept cutting my hours because someone kept calling to complain about me. I needed out, but escaping takes money I didn't have. That Tuesday started like any other. Coffee stains on my uniform, a missed call from my mom asking when I'd fixed things with Derek, and rain soaking through my knockoff boots. I was hiding in the corner of Brewer's Coffee during my break when he walked in. You know those people who immediately command attention? That was him. Tailored suit, expensive watch, typing furiously on his phone like whatever he was doing actually mattered. He looked completely out of place in our little town cafe. When he sat at the table next to mine and spilled coffee all over his documents, I handed him napkins without thinking. Thing, he said, then really looked at me. Actually, this might sound strange, but do you have a minute? That minute turned into an hour. His name was Ethan Westbrook, 32, CEO of a tech company I'd never heard of, and apparently desperately in need of a fiancée. It's strictly business, he explained, voice low. My grandfather's will has a marriage clause. I need to be engaged by my 33rd birthday to inherit controlling shares of the company. My birthday's in 6 months. I laughed. He didn't. I'm serious. I need someone convincing but uninvolved. Someone who won't complicate things with actual feelings. Someone who'll disappear after the inheritance clears. And you're asking the random waitress who gave you napkins? You look... He paused, studying me. Trustworthy, and like you could use a change. The offer came neatly packaged. $250,000 for 6 months of pretending, half paid up front. A confidentiality agreement. A penthouse apartment in the city. A new wardrobe. A convincing backstory. All I had to do was play the part of the devoted fiancé, then walk away when it was over. There are rules, he said, sliding a contract across the table. No real dating during our arrangement. No telling anyone the truth. No developing actual feelings. When it's over completely. That night, I stared at my ceiling again. Derek drove by twice. My bank account showed $173.42. My manager left a voicemail cutting another shift. I called Ethan the next morning. 3 days later, I signed the papers in a sleek downtown law office. By sunset, I was standing in a penthouse 40 floors above the city, watching the lights come on below, my old life invisibly small in the distance. Welcome home, fiancé, Ethan said, handing me a glass of champagne, keeping careful distance between us. Let the show begin. I clinked my glass against his, already wondering exactly what I'd gotten myself into, and why the most terrifying part wasn't the lie we'd be living, but how easily I'd said yes to a complete stranger. The first week living with Ethan felt like an elaborate game of chess. Each of us carefully calculating our moves, maintaining polite distance while sharing the same space. His penthouse was ridiculously large, all floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furniture that probably cost more than my entire life so far. We had separate bedrooms on opposite ends of the hallway, small blessings. We need to learn each other's basics, Ethan said over breakfast on day 3, sliding a folder toward me. Family members, allergies, favorite foods. How women? Our official story can't have gaps. According to our new reality, we'd been secretly dating for 8 months after meeting at a charity auction. Apparently, I'd been volunteering there, a detail that made me laugh. What's funny about volunteering? Ethan frowned. Nothing. It's just not very me. I shrugged. The real me, anyway. Something shifted in his expression. Who is the real you, then? Beyond what I've seen in your background check. Background check. Right. Of course he'd done one. Small town girl, community college dropout, ex-boyfriend issues. Nothing fascinating. And now fiancé to one of Boston's most eligible bachelors, he added, the corner of his mouth twitching. Speaking of which, we need to discuss my family situation. The Westbrook Empire began 3 generations ago, shipping, then real estate, then technology. Ethan's grandfather, still controlling the board at 91, had watched his own children's marriages collapse into messy divorces and corporate power struggles. His solution? The inheritance clause requiring Ethan to demonstrate stability through matrimonial commitment before gaining control. Grandfather believes marriage builds character, Ethan explained, pouring more coffee. He's determined not to let me become my father. 3 wives and a company nearly ruined by distractions. 3 days later, I met Ethan's best friend James, who eyed me suspiciously over martinis. So you're the mystery woman who finally captured the uncapturable, James said. How exactly did that happen? Before I could fumble through our rehearsed story, Ethan's arm slipped around my waist, pulling me against him. The unexpected contact made me freeze. She refused to give me her number, Ethan said, looking at me with practiced adoration. Made me work for it for weeks. Unlike the usual suspects, she wasn't impressed by the Westbrook name. I didn't actually know it, I added truthfully. James laughed. Finally, someone immune to his charms. I like her already. The charity gala the following weekend was my first real test. Designer dress, professional hair and makeup, and a crash course in which fork to use. Ethan's grandfather would be there, the ultimate judge of our performance. Elderly but sharp as a tack, Harrison Westbrook assessed me with eyes that missed nothing. So you're the one who's accomplished what a dozen socialites couldn't, he said, taking my hand. What makes you different, I wonder? Perhaps I wasn't trying to accomplish anything, I replied, surprising myself with my boldness. That tends to change the equation. The old man's eyebrows rose. Then he laughed, a genuine, delighted sound that made heads turn. She'll keep you honest, Ethan, he declared. I approve. Later, champagne buzzing through my system, I found myself on the balcony seeking fresh air. Ethan joined me, loosening his tie. You impressed him, he said quietly. That's unprecedented. I just spoke without calculating, something you might try sometime. His smile faltered. Calculation keeps people from getting hurt. Does it? I asked. Or does it just keep people from getting close? Something unscripted passed between us then. A moment of genuine curiosity about the person behind the arrangement. His hand brushed mine on the railing, and neither of us pulled away immediately. The contract's first rule, no real feelings, suddenly seemed to hover in the air between us. We should get back, he said finally, professional mask sliding back into place. But as we returned to the party, his hand rested lightly on my lower back, and for the first time, the touch didn't feel rehearsed. They say playing with fire eventually gets you burned. By our 3rd month, I was starting to feel the heat. Our fake relationship had developed an alarming rhythm, complete with inside jokes and unconscious habits. The way Ethan automatically handed me coffee with exactly the right amount of cream. How I'd straighten his tie without thinking. Dangerous territory for 2 people contractually forbidden from catching feelings. You look happy, my mother said during our weekly phone call. I told her I'd met someone and moved to the city. The simplified truth. Different somehow. I was different. Designer clothes and proper etiquette were the surface changes. The deeper shift was harder to name. A growing confidence, perhaps. Or maybe just the space to breathe without looking over my shoulder. Until the day that space collapsed. Someone's been asking questions at the diner, my former coworker texted. Some guy showing your picture said he's your boyfriend. Derek. The realization hit like ice water. He'd found out I'd left town, and now he was tracking me. Just as this thought crystallized, my phone lit up with a number I'd deleted but still recognized. I declined the call, hands shaking. Everything okay? Ethan asked, looking up from his laptop across our shared living room. Fine, I lied. What was I supposed to say? That my controlling ex might jeopardize our arrangement? That would only make me a liability. Meanwhile, Ethan was facing pressures of his own. Marcus Harrington, his father's former business partner and current board rival, had taken a sudden interest in our engagement. Harrington cornered me today, Ethan said one evening, loosening his tie with unusual aggression. Implied he's having us watched, said something about the timing being conveniently perfect for the inheritance clause. My stomach dropped. Do you think he knows? If he knew, he'd have evidence, Ethan replied, pacing. But he's suspicious. We need to be more convincing. More convincing meant more public appearances, more photos together, more intimate details shared at family dinners. Ethan's mother asking about wedding venues, his sister interrogating me about children, the fabricated future stretching further and further ahead of us. Then came the night everything shifted. Ethan's high school sweetheart, Victoria, reappeared at a corporate dinner, sleek, sophisticated, and clearly interested in rekindling something. I watched from across the room as she touched his arm, laughed at his comments, leaned in too close. You two have history? I asked later in the car, trying to sound casual. Ancient history, he replied tersely. Nothing important. Didn't look like nothing, I muttered, immediately regretting the comment. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Are you jealous of Victoria? Of course not, I scoffed. That would violate our agreement. Just making sure we're on the same page for appearances. Appearances, he repeated, a strange edge to his voice. Right. The tension built over weeks. One night my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Derek having somehow gotten my new number. When Ethan asked what was wrong, everything spilled out. Derek's controlling behavior. The real reason I'd left town, my fear of being found. Something fierce flashed in Ethan's eyes. He won't get near you, he said, his voice low and certain. I promise. That promise felt different from our contract. Personal, unguarded. Later that night, I found him making calls to security companies, arranging protection I hadn't asked for, but desperately needed. The moment that truly undid me came when I had food poisoning. 3 a.m, huddled miserably on the bathroom floor, I heard a soft knock. Can I come in? Ethan asked. He sat beside me, holding back my hair, pressing a cool cloth to my forehead. No audience, no performance, just quiet care in the darkest part of night when no one was watching. You don't have to do this, I whispered. It's not in the contract. His eyes met mine, something unreadable there. Not everything has to be in writing to matter. The next day we fought about it, our first real argument, about boundaries blurring, about the danger of forgetting why we were really together, about the impossibility of separating the real from the performance after months of pretending. This isn't what we agreed to, I said, voice breaking. We're supposed to be professional. Is that what you want? He challenged. Professional distance. Because it doesn't seem like it. What I want doesn't matter, I shot back. In 3 months this ends. You get your inheritance, I get my payout, and we go our separate ways. That's the plan. His face hardened. The plan, of course. That night, staring at the ceiling of my luxurious bedroom, I faced the truth I'd been avoiding. I was falling for the man who was paying me to pretend to love him, and nothing in our meticulous contract had prepared me for that complication. The engagement party was Ethan's mother's idea. Something intimate, she said, which in Westbrook terms meant only 100 people at their Hampton estate. I wore a champagne-colored gown that cost more than my car back home, and a diamond ring that felt increasingly heavy on my finger. You look beautiful, Ethan said when I emerged from my room. Something had shifted between us since our fight. A careful distance, each of us overcompensating with politeness. The rawness of almost honesty replaced by the safety of our original script. I smiled the practice smile we'd perfected. Ready to make this official? As I'll ever be, he replied, offering his arm. The party was in full swing when I spotted him. Derek, somehow having talked his way past security, standing near the bar in an ill-fitting suit. Our eyes locked across the room and the blood drained from my face. What's wrong? Ethan asked, following my gaze. Before I could answer, Derek was approaching, that familiar smile that never reached his eyes. Surprise, babe. Quite the upgrade you found yourself. You need to leave, I said, voice steadier than I felt. Not until we talk, Derek insisted, reaching for my arm. About how you're apparently engaged when you never even properly broke up with me. Ethan stepped between us. She asked you to leave. What followed was chaos, Derek revealing our relationship issues to nearby guests, loudly questioning when Ethan and I had time to fall in love, given my recent departure from Mill Creek. Harrison Westbrook's attention captured, Marcus Harrington watching with calculated interest, the whispers spreading. Is it true? Harrison asked, his piercing gaze moving between us. Is this engagement a fabrication? I couldn't lie to his face, not after months of genuine respect growing between us. But before I could speak, Ethan stepped forward. Our engagement is real, he said firmly. The circumstances of how we met, those were adjusted for privacy. But what's between us now is genuine. I stared at him, heart hammering. Was this still part of the performance? Harrington smirked. Convenient timing, though, isn't it? Right before the inheritance deadline? The timing was my choice, I heard myself say. I asked Ethan to keep our relationship private until I was ready. My ex, I glanced at Derek, made leaving difficult. Ethan protected my privacy. Security escorted Derek out, but the damage was done. Questions lingered, doubt crept in. And later that night, alone in our penthouse, the truth finally surfaced. Why did you say it was real? I asked. You could have just admitted the arrangement. Because it is real, Ethan said, voice rough. Maybe not how it started, but it's real now. At least for me. My heart stopped. What are you saying? I'm saying I broke our most important rule, he confessed. No real feelings. I've had them for weeks, maybe longer. This isn't part of the contract, I whispered. I don't want the contract anymore, he said, stepping closer. I want you, not for appearances or inheritance. Just you. I backed away. How do I know this isn't just another performance? Your inheritance is still at stake. I've already told my grandfather the truth, he said, surprising me. This afternoon before the party. I was going to tell you tonight. You told him everything and risked losing everything? Some things matter more, he said simply. I left that night needing space to think, returned to Mill Creek to face the past I'd been running from. Derek tried again to insert himself into my life, but this time I stood my ground, finding strength I hadn't known I possessed before my months with Ethan. A week passed, then two. I was working at the local library when Ethan walked in, looking out of place among the dusty shelves. I've been looking everywhere for you, he said. I needed to make sure, I explained, that what I felt was real, that I could stand on my own if it wasn't. And the vulnerability in his eyes nearly undid me. And I love you, I said. Not your money or the lifestyle. Just you. The man who holds his coffee mug with both hands every morning, who leaves his socks everywhere, who sat with me at 3 a.m. when I was sick. He crossed the distance between us. I have a new proposition, he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. No audience this time. No performance. Just two people who found something real in the midst of pretending. Last time you hired me, I said, tears threatening. What's the job offer now? The hardest one, he smiled. Being my real wife. No contract, no end date. 1 year later, we're married. Legally, genuinely. Harrison changed the inheritance clause, saying he preferred authentic love to technical compliance. Ethan's company thrives under his leadership. I've started my own business with his encouragement. Sometimes I still wonder at the strange path that brought us here. How something that began as escape became the very thing I'd run toward. How the rules we set to protect ourselves became the walls we needed to break down. The contract sits framed in our office now, A reminder that the most meaningful commitments are the ones that can't be contained in writing. That sometimes when you're busy pretending to be someone else, you accidentally discover who you truly are. That's how I accidentally fell in love with the man who hired me to be his fake fiancé. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear that sometimes the most unexpected beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings. Drop a comment about your own unexpected love story, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life tales that prove truth is always stranger than fiction.